Hello, my name is Jenilee and welcome to the channel. Today, I'm happy to share with you guys 10 kitchen staples. They're very simple and easy to make, and they are so much more nourishing than what you buy from the grocery store. And it will save you a little bit of money from your grocery budget making them as well. Today, we're going to start out by making some homemade yogurt, and it has never been easier to make yogurt than it is today. I always make mine in my Instapot, and I put 8 cups of milk in my Instapot, bring it to the boil setting. Then I wait for it to cool to 108 or 110 degrees, and then I add my culture, which is 2 tablespoons of plain Greek yogurt. Then I whisk it all together and put my yogurt setting on for about 8 hours and let it go. I also have a friend who does hers on the stove. She brings it to a boil, and then she just insulates her pot with towels and blankets, puts the lid on, and sets it on the counter. So there's lots of ways to do it, and it's pretty simple. I like to put a homemade berry sauce on my plain yogurt with a little bit of granola, and I'll be sharing my homemade berry sauce with you guys in this video in just a little bit. As a mother of 4 kids, pancakes are really a staple in our home in all forms. So I'm going to share with you guys a hack for making freezer pancakes. And this is the quick and very simple way to do it. I follow my whole wheat pancake recipe. I am actually quadrupling it. And I'm going to put it in a large baking sheet with parchment paper and coconut oil. And this way I can just cut up the pancake into squares and freeze them, and they can warm them up in the toaster. It's nice to have something that your kids can pull out themselves and prepare for themselves, pop it in the toaster. And this can also be good for those early mornings before school or whatever you need, and you can put whatever toppings in them you want. I did think that this pancake was a little bit thick for the toaster. So I think instead of quadrupling it in the future, I will just triple the recipe. So I'll go ahead and put the tripled version down in the description box. And then I just bake it at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. The pancakes are so much easier to handle and cut and store after a 1-hour flash freeze. So they're not totally frozen, but they're just sort of frozen, and that just makes it easier to cut through. one half of the pancakes or blueberry and the other half is chocolate chips. So this next kitchen staple is meant to save you some money and also help you avoid that corn syrupy, cheap syrup that you find at the store that I really don't love feeding my family. You can make this as healthy as you want, but I'm using raw cane sugar, also some brown sugar. It really darkens the syrup up, and some maple flavoring, a little bit of salt, a little bit of water. And I cook it on the stove and boil that for just a little bit. And it actually gets thicker as it cools. And since we do eat a lot of pancakes, it's nice to have this on hand. I do love having some real maple sugar or real maple syrup on hand, but it can be a little expensive. And so this is a nice hack and a nice thing to have on the shelf. I call it Grandma's maple syrup. And here is a healthier option. This is a berry sauce that I like to make to put on my yogurt and pancakes. I make it with whatever berries I have in the freezer. So I'm using blueberries and strawberries. I cook that on the stove with a little bit of water, and then I add some honey and 2 tablespoons of chia seeds. Mix that all up or blend it with my immersion blender. And as that cools in the fridge, it's going to thicken up nicely because of the chia seeds and the natural pectin that is in the berries. We are still in hot cocoa season, and so I thought it would be perfect to make some beef gelatin marshmallows. Now, the reason for beef gelatin is that this is a much healthier version of a marshmallow. And instead of being made with tons of sugar, you can make it with honey or maple syrup. Beef gelatin is actually so good for you in so many ways. It's good for your joints because it's made from the connective tissues in cows. And so it can really help with joint problems and joint pain. It also is full of collagen, so it's good for your skin and hair and adding some more elasticity in your skin. And it's also good for your intestinal systems and those who are struggling with intestinal problems. So there's so many health benefits to this. So you can feel really good about eating this marshmallow, which is why I just had to give it a try and go for it. And I was really pleasantly surprised how simple it was to make these. So it just took 3 tablespoons of beef gelatin mixed in 1 cup of water and bringing that to a steaming but not boiling on the stove, and then whipping that into some honey and vanilla. And you want to whip it until it's just holding together, but not really stiff peaks, because once this sets, it sets quickly. So you want it to be a little bit soft, and then pour it into some parchment paper and put it in the fridge and let it solidify. And it does solidify quite quickly. So you got to move fast. I have made some protein hot chocolate here on the stove. So this is also sugar-free, and it's a collagen peptide protein powder. So we're getting a lot of collagen in this yummy treat. And I'm using rice flour to sprinkle on my marshmallows because they're very sticky. So you could use powdered sugar, rice flour, probably any other flours of your choice. The texture of these marshmallows are smooth and fluffy and very vanilla-y. They really did take on that honey flavor. So if you would prefer a maple flavor, go ahead and use a real nice maple syrup. And I'm storing mine in a jar in the fridge, and hopefully these will last me through the week. I've been kind of snacking on them as a little dessert at the end of the day. They are so yummy. And I love it even more that I can feel really good about eating these for my health. Recently, I had my cousin and her new husband over for dinner, and she asked me how I became a homemaker and how I started cooking from scratch, and if I made all the mistakes. I assured her that I definitely made so many mistakes, and that is how I started cooking from scratch, is by making all the mistakes. There was a time in my young motherhood life that we lived in a small town in Wyoming, and we were 45 minutes from the nearest town one way and an hour to the larger town the other direction. And I did not leave very often, especially in the wintertime. And so I really put my time and energy into making good food at home. And I made it my goal to learn how to make bone broth. I learned how to make soap, and I wanted to know all the things. I wanted to learn how to make the best rolls I could make, and I started making rolls and lunches for Jared's faculty at their school. And I would also freeze soups and meals and put them in my freezer so that when people came to visit Jared's school and they needed to stop somewhere for dinner, because there was no place to stop for dinner in this little town, it was just a gas station, Jared would bring him into our home, and I would always have some homemade from scratch meal in the freezer or something cooking on the stove. And that's where I really began exercising the cooking from scratch muscle, was living in the middle of nowhere and not having a store nearby. But you don't have to live in the middle of nowhere to learn how to cook from scratch. You can learn how to do anything you put your mind to. Use the resources around you. We have an internet, we have YouTube. We can learn to do just about anything. We have some fresh chives that are growing out in the field, and I always like to cut those down during winter and springtime when all the grasses die down. And I'm going to use those to add a fresh flavor to our homemade ranch dressing. I make so much bread here on the channel. It kind of goes without saying that baked breads and baked goods are definitely a staple in my kitchen. And today I'm going to be making some sourdough pizza dough, and we're just going to mix it up, let it ferment just a little bit, and put it straight into the freezer so that it can be ready to use in the future. It's nice to be able to pull out some dough and let it warm up and make some pizza on a Friday night. This pizza dough recipe is actually just made from a regular country bread loaf recipe and used to make pizza dough as well. And I'm just weighing about 400 grams of dough so that it's about the right size to be able to make one large thick crust pizza, or you could make 2 thin medium crust pizzas. And I'm making about 5 of these. Every week, I make about 4 loaves of sourdough sandwich bread. Sometimes I switch it up and I make a couple of artisan loaves as well. And then I use that discard or extra bubbly fed sourdough and I make bagels or muffins or whatever extra things we want to have. But they usually don't last very long because the whole family just devours them. The last thing on our list today is going to be making some sauerkraut. And also I'm going to make kimchi for the first time, but it's quite similar to making sauerkraut. Whenever I'm preserving food or doing anything with fermentation, Jared likes to jump in and give me a hand. In fact, he's the one who makes all of the water kefir. So we are making about 5 pounds of sauerkraut. So we've measured out 5 pounds of chopped cabbage, and we used green cabbage and purple cabbage. I love the way that purple cabbage makes the sauerkraut look. It turns into pink sauerkraut. And then we added about 3 tablespoons of salt to the 5 pounds of cabbage. I have a nice big crock that I like to use. I got from Layman's, and I will find a link for you guys if you are interested in my 5-pound crock as well. And I find that my body just really craves fermented foods, especially this time of year. I love to put it on my sandwiches and my breakfast eggs and just have a little bit of it every day. And I think it's especially good for us during the flu season to really build up our digestive systems and our gut biome. I'm also going to try my hand at making kimchi for the first time, and it seems pretty similar to making sauerkraut, or at least a very similar idea, but much spicier, a lot more flavor. It's going to have carrots, green onions, fresh garlic, and fresh ginger, and even some spicy chilies, and it smells amazing. You don't need a fancy big crock to ferment. You can use a couple of mason jars, and as long as you have some weights to push down all of the veggies, and the liquid needs to rise above all the veggies. And I even poured in some hot boiling water. I didn't show it here, but I like to pour in some hot boiling water, just a little bit to bring that liquid up. I want to thank my friends here on YouTube for responding to my post and sharing their favorite things to make at home, some of their staples they have in their kitchen. So I can't wait to hear from you guys down in the comments to hear what your staples are, and I'll catch you next week for another video. Love you lots.